We gathered like 200 people from 40 countries, and we decided to formalize an alliance. So a year after that, in November of 23, we had over 350 activists from 56 countries, and we decided to practice democracy to build our movement, and we decided to elect our leadership council. So for many of the people that were there, this was the first time they voted. And
Wow.
I was really taken by the fact that people were very sentimental. They were crying, and I couldn't understand.
I think everybody has a superpower. We don't know it. And I would love to do that with people, to be able to sit down with them and talk to them like we're talking now and really think about, okay, what's your superpower? So what do you think your superpower is? If you had to pick one thing that is like, Superman flies, Batman's rich, there's all these different superpowers. But what is your one superpower?
I'll tell you, my wife and my kids.
Wow. So your
superpower.
Your superpower is that connection.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I would have been capable of overcoming all of this without my wife.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that's kept me going.
That's so awesome. All right. So speaking of, in this podcast, we do some wild and crazy things, even though we're trying to be serious. And we have a way you can call a family member, and we want to get on the call with them and see if they'll, well, first of all, see if they'll pick up.
They are in Spain now. So
what time is it in Spain?
It's around 7 p.m.
Okay.
I hope he answers. My son. So Lilian, I'm here with Mu. This is Mu. He was my partner at Massive.
Hello. How are you?
You were just at Massive with Simon. So Mu, this is Lilian, my wife. This is my superpower. And can you show Mu the other superpower, the kids?
Here, yes. Well, we are all massive. We are all massive. That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. So nice to meet you. So we asked Leopoldo. We said, "What is your superpower?" And he said you were his superpower. So we wanted to talk to you and just say hi.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you, Leo. I think I am not the superpower. We are together a superpower.
Wow.
That you have a relation. You can be married, or you can have a very nice friend. And one is the relation that you have with the person. The other is the relation that the person have with you. But there's something else. It's something together. That's the best, the relation. The real relation is the relation that we build together.
Wow, that's amazing.
Our relation is not only, attractive or a lover relation. It's more than that. It's a relation that is involved with our country, with our home country. So there's people around. There's people inside our country that we really care from our soul. So when Leopoldo asked me to marry with me, and he asked me two questions: if you want married with me, and if you married with the country. That's a huge question, and I answer yes. So in that moment we start something together. We start a family, we start our relation, and we start our commitment to Venezuela. So I'm proud of that. It's hard, it's not easy, it's a challenge every day. But I think with our love and with the power that we build together that day, we continue fighting and we continue working and we continue. I think the most important thing is have hope and dream with freedom.
Wow. Okay. You know what? I just realized I am moving to Spain. I am going to be part of the family. I am inspired. So you have another, I can be the crazy uncle. How about that?
We need family, we need uncles, we need friends. Yes, of course we need. And it's amazing. I think we met people that really care
Yeah.
and really smile when they understand our dream and they understand our life. And I always said that happened to Venezuela, happened for many countries. And you are from the United States, I think, and it's an amazing country. But I really...
Well, actually, Mu is from Canada. Manuela, show Manuela. Manuela moves from Canada.
Yes.
This is my daughter, Manuela.
Hi, Manuela.
One of my great-grandparents is from Canada.
Oh,
and Manuela
yeah.
thinks of herself as Canadian.
You are Canadian.
She has the Canadian flag in her room.
Yes, yes.
When Canada is amazing in human rights. I love Canada as well. And I always remember when I started snowboarding with Leo was in Vancouver. So I have a really beautiful remembrance of Canada, and it's an amazing country, and it inspired us for learn from your country, learn from United States, learn for Europe, and bring together to build that country that we really want in the future.
Wow, I'm inspired. Well, we appreciate the time. I know it's a little weird to have people call you on a podcast, but we just wanted, he mentioned that you were and your family is a superpower, and we appreciate the time you spent with us.
Thank you, Leo. I love you. Thank you, Mu.
Ciao, Chu. Te quiero.
All right.
Ciao, Manu.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, Fede. Te quiero, hija.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Well, I know you wouldn't lie to me. I know you wouldn't lie to me, but I can even tell more that they are your superpower. Your face just totally lit up.
It lit up.
The minute I mean, just and think about it. I mean, I'm not sure if I called home if they'd be all day. No, but that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
That I see how that can be your friend. And that connect, like you said, and she said it too. The fact that I feel like my proposal in my marriage was not as good as Leopoldo.
No,
he said you have to marry the country.
Yeah.
Oh, we had this thing. We were about to get married, but Lillian actually broke up with me because we were not engaged, and then we went back, and then actually the moment was very unique because I said I want to get married, but I don't want you to think that I am going to do something else.
Right,
This is what I am. This is my passion.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to be in the position where we get married and then I start getting, pressure for leaving politics or leaving, what's my dream. So we went out to a tattoo parlor and we both tattooed Venezuela. I have a map of Venezuela in my leg, and she has the Venezuela in her wrist.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of our commitment. So we don't forget.
Yes.
We don't forget.
So I want to ask you about one other tattoo you have.
Oh, yeah.
But before that, I just want to point out something here. Jordan, we talk about, as disruptors. There are a lot of characteristics that are similar with disruptors. And I think we were talking today that I didn't know I was a disruptor. Like going through my leadership journey, I didn't know that's what I was doing. But every time I saw something that wasn't right, or I saw a rule that shouldn't be a rule, there's something in me that made me, had a discomfort with it. I could feel that in you. But the thing I talk about is for disruptors, you have to be resilient. I mean, and I would even say not just resilient, but almost a compulsion with the cause or with what you want to fix or what you want to disrupt. The second thing that I thought when I heard your story was optimism. And people don't often see disruptors as being optimists, as being, thinking the world is great. because the reason you're disrupting is usually to make the world better, right? And that's a piece, I think, that in hearing your story and talking to you again about it and seeing your expression and listening to your wife talk about it, there's an optimism. You know, she said that I like to go to these different countries because I like to learn about them, but not that I want to learn about them so I can have a greater experience. It's learn about them so I can bring those lessons home to Venezuela. Right? That's super, super powerful.
No, I think optimism it's key, because it's very easy to be pessimistic.
Yes.
It's very easy to be in the position of always being in a bad mood, to be, to see yourself as a victim. And I have seen, because I have so many friends that went through prison and persecution, that I can tell you I've become not wanting to, but in a way an expert of the way people react when they go through prison. And I have a rule of thumb. More or less a third of the people just disengage when they just disengage. I'm out. I'm out. I want to just do something different. I don't want anything to do with this. Another third of the people come out resentful and thinking that they deserve a level of recognition that they are never going to get.
Wow.
And then a third of the people come out wanting to fight with more enthusiasm. That's more or less a rule of thumb that I have seen. And that third of people that come out expecting everybody to recognize what they did, it's a recipe for a frustration. Because if you're expecting recognition and you wake up every day expecting recognition, you're never going to get enough. Even if you get all of the recognition, it's never going to be enough. But if you wake up not expecting recognition, every bit of recognition that you get, it's a world.
It's perspective.
And it's, pragmatically speaking, it's much better to live that way. Yeah. Right. It's much better. Because, you get bits of recognition and you're happy with that. If you're expecting, just loads of recognition and it's not going to come, and if it comes, it's never enough, don't you understand I went through this sacrifice? Don't you understand that, I went through prison? And no. I mean, it's your life. It was my life. I decided to turn myself in. The people in my movement, we all decided to do what we did. We knew the risks. The recognition, the ultimate recognition is change. Yeah. Is to bring democracy. I mean, that's the ultimate recognition. But if you're expecting personal recognition, and I've seen it with so many of my friends.
I mean, you're hitting a note with me just in my role, in the number of people that talk about, I want this job, or I need this raise, or I need this. People are, I used to call it ambition, but I think resentment is a better term, because what it means is I deserve. Yeah. I deserve. I did this. I deserve. And I think what I struggle with is phrasing it the way you did, is that any recognition you get should be amazing. You should be doing great work because you want to do great work, not because you're looking for, a raise or a job title. So I think, the business applications of that, those three. Yeah,
what's taken me to be just very convinced of this is that today I admire many leaders. Yeah. I admire many of the same leaders I used to admire maybe 20 years ago, but I admire different aspects of their leadership. What I admire the most are the people who have the capacity to cross the desert. And that is not an easy thing, because there are some great stories of people who were just, the right person at the right time and the right, serendipity, and boom, they did, But there are others that, with the circumstances completely against you, they continued. Yes. And I can mention many. Churchill won the Second World War and he lost the election. And before that he was not recognized as a leader in times of peace. Many of the Venezuelan leaders I admire went through the desert either in exile or in prison, or even not being recognized by the people at some point. So I really think that having the capacity to understand the desert, and that the desert is part of leadership, is part of human growth, is part of what you are. If you're not able to be at the bottom, you're going to be fragile at the top.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that capacity to cross the desert and still be good with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, crossing the desert. This is a part
of
where I need more strength, where I need more focus, and if your entire well-being comes through recognition, you're completely unfit to cross the desert.
Yeah.
Because when you're crossing the desert, you're not getting any recognition.
Well, we talked earlier about something that I believe in my life, and also what we're trying to do in the partnership in Vituity, is the idea that satisfaction is there's. I mean, in the desert, think about if you lived your life wanting to be satisfied with what you're doing, you'd never make it through the desert. And I think, when you look at patient satisfaction or physician, we look at a lot of provider satisfaction and employee satisfaction. It's really more about fulfillment, because you can make it through the desert being fulfilled, but you can't make it through the desert being satisfied.
Oh, of course.
Right? Because you're never going to get satisfied in that, barren of an environment. So I want to jump back a little bit, because the story that intrigued me, maybe not the most, but one of the stories that intrigued me is you told me in prison there was a bird.
Oh yeah.
That sort of kept coming back to you. And you tell me about the bird.
Well, I was in the 4th floor, and there was a tree. I had a crack in my window, and there was an eagle's nest. Right.
Yeah.
So I had time to contemplate this bird, and I got to know the bird, the way they mate, the pigeons, the way they searched for the food, where they ate, the way they played. And one day, because I talked about the bird, you remember in Forrest Gump when Bubba was talking about the shrimp all the time, right? So I was talking about the bird all the time. And so one day the bird goes out to get a chicken, and he just slams against the barbed wire. And one of the guards tells me, "Oh, your bird just had an accident and it's going to die." I said, "Well, why don't you bring the bird?" So they brought the bird, and I was able to spend an entire month and a half. I fed the bird, and it just became an incredible relation. Then one day, as they did with everything, when I was reading, they took my books. When I was drawing, they took my colors. And when I had the bird, they took the bird away.
Oh.
So they took the bird, but the bird went back to the same nest, to the same tree. So it was, for 4 years, I had this weird relation. I'm not a biologist, I'm not a bird watcher.
Right.
But it just became a kind of a companion that was there. So years after we did that after I left, I was in Madrid. This is a year and 2 years ago. I'm in Madrid with my daughter, and then a Venezuelan woman comes to me. "Hey, Leopoldo, how are you? Oh, how are you? Oh, I was with you and Lilian with Shell when you did the tattoo of Venezuela. This is 17 years ago. Oh, wow. Did you know that Shell is here in Madrid, the tattoo artist?"
Yeah,
said, "No way.
Yeah.
Do you have his contact?" Yeah, I have his contact. So I reach out to him, and Lilian and we go there, and I said, "I want this drawing of this bird. I want a big tattoo." So I have a tattoo right here, this big tattoo of my companion, of my bird, and it just means a lot to me. And it was just a great way of doing it. I always wanted to do it after I left Venezuela, but I didn't want to go to whatever tattoo parlor. So it was kind of destiny, that the same guy that did 17 years ago, he happened to leave Venezuela, go to the same place I was, and we did it. So it's, in a way, for me, is to make also that part of my life, which, could be all about darkness, all about all about darkness. I learned in my time in prison. I learned. And I think I became a better person. I learned the skill of self-control. I learned the skill of crossing the desert. I learned the skill of being with myself and nobody else.
Yeah.
So I always, whatever I do, I always try to take the opportunity of whatever, in whatever circumstance I am, I just try to make the best of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was a symbol of resilience for me, just that bird.
Yeah. So now we fast forward, from the bird, you're on house arrest and you're thinking about, okay, this is probably not the safest place for my family and my situation, that maybe we got to do something different. And you tell us about how you made the transition.
This is the year 2018. I was in house arrest. It was a very bad year, politically speaking, because Maduro has stolen another election and the democratic movement was really torn down. So January of 2019, we had a window of opportunity because we had won the National Assembly, as we told you. After the hunger strike, there was the election. We won 2/3 of the National Assembly. And my movement had the presidency for the year 2019. And we saw a window in the Constitution that stated that if the president-elect doesn't swear in to the National Assembly, then the president of the National Assembly becomes the interim president. Mm-hmm. So we were able, and I was able to do this from house arrest, just to reach out to the other political movements and to Colombia and to the United States. And we were able to build an opportunity to make the president of the National Assembly the interim president. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. And that was a very important moment, a very huge moment of our ongoing struggle for freedom in Venezuela. So Juan Guaidó becomes the interim president. He's from my movement. He's a founder of my movement. And I was in house arrest helping him through this challenge. And to make a long story short, there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of protest. And there was a lot of international pressure. So a very high-ranking military officer reaches out to me. And he said, he sends a message, self-destructive video with his image and the image of a civilian. You know what to make of it. A week after that, that civilian shows up. My house, remember, I told you, was surrounded by 40 guards. So he comes in with permission of them, and he says, "Well, we want to, we want to help. We want to join, the movement." And I said, "Well, if you really want to do this, allow me to meet with the people I'm talking to." So I'd been talking to different members of the military, of the police. I had been in a military prison for years. I had run a police force for 8 years, so I knew this is a group of people I understand. So I started to meet with different people. The head of the National Police came, the head of the political police, some lieutenant colonels that were in charge of the security of different parts of the city. And we agreed to a plan to combine the civil protest with the protest of the military and the police. It was a non-violent action, but very extreme. So on April 30th, I was freed from house arrest with a convoy of military and police that were siding with us. They picked me up at my house around 4:30 a.m. We went to a place where we gathered around 300 military and police officers, and we called for protests. And tens of thousands of people came out to the street. It was completely nonviolent, but it was just higher in the stakes.
When you get, police out there with weapons and everything, even if they don't use them, that's still a higher level.
And so it was, taking the protest to another level. We had coordinated with the president of the Supreme Court, who was also wanting to side with us, a decision of the Supreme Court to not recognize the election of Maduro and call for new elections. That didn't happen, so things didn't happen the way we wanted. So we had to manage that day. That was a big crisis. And I ended up that day seeking refuge at the Spanish embassy. So my kids were with my parents in Spain. They left like 3 weeks before that. The situation was getting very tense, so my 2 elder kids left, and my wife and my young daughter went with me to the embassy. They escaped Venezuela after a month, and I stayed there for a year and a half. The embassy was under siege. They got the electricity, the trash service. There were drones over the embassy. It was surrounded by police, and I was there with the ambassador, a great person, Jesus Silva, and his wife, and a group of the equivalent of the Navy SEALs of Spain. So I became very good friends with these folks. We would train, as I told you before, I like combat sports, I like training. So we would train twice a day. I was working very hard to support Guaidó and everything that we were doing. And after a year and a half, they changed the ambassador, and I knew that things were going to change. My mother was very sick. She was going through dialysis. She was waiting for a kidney transplant. And this is 2020, and she got infected with COVID. So imagine, my mother, who was 76 at the time, going through dialysis, being in COVID. So, I was, this is a calling. I had not seen my father for 7 years. I had not seen my mother for years. I had not seen my wife and my kids for more than a year and a half. So I decided to leave Venezuela. So I had to organize my escape. And I called a friend with whom we've done different things. I had spoke with him before. I said, one day I'm going to call you and I'm just going to say, hey, man, and you know what you have to do. So I called him up. I said, hey, my man. And he organized the escape. The country was in complete lockdown, not just because of COVID, but because of the political circumstance. So it was very risky. We couldn't go through the shore of the Caribbean Sea. We couldn't go through the west to Colombia. So we had to go south. So I leave the embassy in the trunk of a car that was a diplomatic license plate. I go from that car to another car. From that car, we go to an office building. I go to the basement of that office building, and I see a group of my friends. And they were all dressed as members of the electricity company. So he had taken control of a truck of the electricity company, and they all had uniforms. So we spent the next 45 minutes rehearsing, who we were. If you're in a disguise operation, there are 2 things you need to be very aware of. You need to answer the question of who you are and why are you there.
Right.
And
right.
the status of being and status of action, Spycraft 101.
Right.
So,
Spycraft. We're the same age. You mentioned the Spycraft.
So, 45 minutes. My role was to be the assistant of the assistant of the assistant and to be sick. It was COVID at the time. There was no vaccine in the horizon yet.
Right.
So, we had the uniforms. I had my ID card, the hat. We crossed like 20 checkpoints. It's all good. We reached the southern border with Colombia. It was a river, the Meta River, and there was nobody at that checkpoint. So we go through that checkpoint. We're in the boat. The engine is on, and then we see like 6 military coming, running to us with their machine guns, pointing at us, and calling us to step out of the boat, go to the checkpoint. My friend takes the lead, as we had planned, and they start asking all sorts of questions. And of course, they ask the ID. Remember, it was COVID, so I was not talking, I was coughing, and we all had the masks. And this was very important because everybody knew who I was.
Right.
So my friend had a backpack. In the backpack, he had some cash. And the lieutenant there asked him, so who are you? You're not from the electricity company. Why were you crossing to Colombia? And he says, all right, I want to tell you the truth. we are, have a case against me. What case you have against you? You have a judicial case against me. It's not political, right? No. It's not political. It's financial. I work in a bank, and okay. So let me call the general. And my friend was very quick, and he said, "Whoa, wait. If you call him, you know what's going to happen. That cash that you have in your hands, it's going to go to him. So why don't you think through?" He thought about it for like 30 seconds. And, this was 45 minutes of just, I was getting flashbacks of my time at prison. The river was right there. I was sitting next to a friend. I said, I am not going to go back. If things get tough, I am going to go to the river and I'm going to try to swim my way out. I just want to let you know, I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to give Maduro a victory of catching me at the last
Right. The very end of it.
At the very end of it. It's just going to make this a huge victory. I'm not going to give that to him. But fortunately, we were able to walk our way out, and we cross the border, get to Colombia. Then the secret police of Colombia was waiting for me because we had reached out. We had an ally president at the time, Ivan Duque, very close friend. They put me in a plane. They fly me to Bogota. In Bogota, I met people from Colombia, some of my friends from the U.S. I said, okay, so I can stay here for a day or two, meet the president. No, you're flying directly to the U.S. They put me in a plane, fly me to the U.S. When we land in the airport, I had nothing. I had no papers, I had no passport, nothing. They said, so who's waiting for you? The guy at the airport, CIA, FBI, Homeland, who's waiting for you? I said, no. I think I'm calling an Uber.
No, CIA, FBI, Homeland,
and then I have my Uber.
That's great.
So I get my Uber, go to a friend's house, and basically nobody knew that I had escaped, but the news was coming out. Talked to the ambassador, the news came out, and the Spanish government put me in a plane the next day. So the next day I flew to Madrid and I met my family. And it was an incredible day for family, but it was a new day for hardships.
Yeah.
Because exile, like I told you, prison is tough. House arrest is tough for the reasons I told you. And exile is very tough for someone that is taken out of the thing that you've devoted your life to.
Yes.
It's like telling a medical doctor, you will never be able to practice again.
Yeah. Yes.
You will never be able to step into hospital.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of another part of my life where I had to reinvent myself. I continued to be very engaged in my movement in Venezuela with the entire opposition movement, but understanding that I was no longer there. And the most important realization for me was the most basic one, to realize that my present reality was that I was now in exile. And I think this is true for other people. It's just there are some things you cannot change. I mean, you cannot change. And in my case, I couldn't change the fact that I was no longer in my country.
Yeah.
So I had to reinvent myself. I continued to be very engaged, as I said, with my movement, but I decided to give the leadership of the movement in Venezuela to another great leader who was there. He's now in prison. And he took the leadership of the movement and kept it going. But I had to reinvent myself. So I came to the U.S. for a couple of meetings of human rights events, and started to meet other people from other countries, from Iran, from Russia, from Uganda, from Zimbabwe, from Cuba, from Nicaragua, and started to learn that my story was the same story of many other people. And that my fight really had no borders. And up until I came into exile, my fight was constrained to the borders of my country. And I started to understand that the things I was fighting for, freedom, human rights, democracy, which for me and for Venezuelans and for the people who live under autocratic regimes, these are not theoretical things. I mean, everybody that is living under an autocratic regime has a personal account of what it means to live in a circumstance where you are not free. Because you cannot listen to the things you want to listen. You cannot move the way you would like to move. You cannot work in the things that you want to work. You cannot say the things that you would like to say. You cannot meet with the people you would like to meet. So everybody has a story about what it means to be living in a space that is not free. So started to meet with great people, and we decided to create a new movement. And as I told you, that's my nuts and bolts. That's what I like to do. So I pitched to them the idea of building an alliance of freedom fighters and democracy defenders from autocratic countries. So with Garry Kasparov, the Russian chess master from Russia, Masih Alinejad, who is an incredible woman from Iran, who was leading the protests of the women of Iran recently, and others, we decided to create what we call the World Liberty Congress, which is an alliance of democracy defenders, human rights defenders, and freedom fighters from autocratic countries. So we have focused our alliance of the people from autocratic countries. Because we narrowed what we want to do, not to talk about democracy and to think of democracy at large. That I can have an opinion about the state of democracy in the US or in Europe, but what we want to focus is to support the leaders and the movements from countries that are not democratic in order to overcome dictatorship and become democracies. So we met for the first time in Lithuania, in Eastern Europe, in November of 2022. We gathered like 200 people from 40 countries, and we decided to formalize an alliance. So a year after that, in November of 23, we had over 350 activists from 56 countries, and we decided to practice democracy to build our movement, and we decided to elect our leadership council. So for many of the people that were there, this was the first time they voted. And I was really taken by the fact that people were very sentimental. They were crying, and I couldn't understand. They were saying, this is the first time I'm voting for something that is meaningful. I have never voted before. People from China, people from North Korea, people from Syria. And we built this movement by practicing democracy. That's why I was really interested in what you were telling me about Vituity, that you guys have thousands of partners, and the partners elect the board members, and then the board members elect the CEO. So that's the way we built our movement. You're a company, we are a movement, but in a similar way, the governance of being democratic is very, very powerful. And especially practicing democracy is something that we need to do, because we come from countries that democracy, it's not the day-to-day. So practicing, electing people, practicing being transparent, being accountable are very important things. So that's how we built the World Liberty Congress. I dedicate an important part of my time today to build this alliance. I'm very grateful for it because I have learned a great deal. I may be one of the few people in the world that I wouldn't say I'm the most knowledgeable, because I'm not. There are academics and people who are very knowledgeable of the specific circumstances of all of these countries. But I am one of the few that are friends with the people who are the troublemakers against autocratic regimes. So I am friends with the people who led the protest in Hong Kong, the people who won the election and the protests in Belarus, the people who are protesting in Russia, the people who led the protest in Iran, the people who are leading the protest in Cuba or in Nicaragua. They're all my friends. So this is a very special movement of people that we all have our commitment to our own countries. We're very different in terms of skin color, religion, history, climate, I mean, you name it. But when we start talking about this, if you put in a room, imagine this is a room of 350 people that when we ask them, how many of you have been in prison? Half of the room raise their hand. And when I ask them, how many of you have someone today that is in prison that you know? Everybody raise their hand. When I ask them, how many of you have been the victim of a murder attempt? Like a fifth of the people raise their hand. When I ask them, how many of you have been the victim of smear campaigns by the regimes? Everybody raise their hand.
Wow. So
this is a very particular group of people. You know, when we meet and we talk, it's like, so many years you spend in prison? Oh, I spent 7. Oh, I spent 3. Oh, it's day to day. You know, it's like for you guys at ER, you know, how many, you know, how many bodies have you opened? When you tell me the stories of what happens in the ER room, you know, I'm
Everybody's
shocked. I'm shocked. It's like, wow.
But ER docs are just like it's...
But ER guys, it's like, oh, well, it's day to day, right? So the day to day for this group of people is to confront dictatorships and autocracies. And I think that this is one of the big global issues like climate change. And I hope that we can bring the level of consciousness about freedom and democracy to the level that it was done with climate change over the past 30 years. Because we are not aware of the fact that 70% of the people today in the world are living under some sort of autocratic regime. It was 40% 12 years ago. So the state of the world is quickly moving to becoming more and more autocratic, and it doesn't seem to be a concern to most people. So our challenge is to strengthen our movements in our countries, but also to make people who live in democratic and free countries to realize that that is a privilege, and that is a privilege that every human being should be given, the possibility of being free. And I strongly believe this. And I strongly dispute the people that say that there are cultural elements for autocratic regimes. People that say, oh, you don't understand the Middle East. They can't have democracy. Oh, you don't understand, you know, certain countries in Africa, they need strong men and they need, you know, autocratic regimes. No, people want to be free. And I think everybody should be given the opportunity of living with dignity, with freedom, and with respect to basic human rights.
Yeah, that's profound. I mean, and it's something that, you know, you pointed out, and I think we all go through this in our leadership journeys, right? I mean, the ability to affect one person becomes the ability to affect one area, which is the ability to affect, you know, sort of a bigger area than that. And it's like, you want to change the world. And people, you know, when you tell people that, so one of the hashtags, if you ever go on LinkedIn, I always put hashtag change the world, and people will DM me and say, you know, that's corny. It isn't. It's daunting, but it isn't corny. And I think that that's what you've taken something that has happened to you, which is in some ways devastating, but in other ways inspirational, and taking it now to the whole world. You know, I was going to mention too, we talked about this, why your story even now resonates with me, and it'll resonate with me when we can do this again. And it will still, every time I learn more and more and more. So I told you I grew up in Canada and moved to the United States when I was 18. I was enamored with the United States. I'm just like you were about the democracy. There were other things, even though in Canada we had a great country, that I was just like, wow, this is a place where people actually pursue dreams. Like people with nothing can become people with everything, whether that's money or success or just even families, whatever you view as success. That's a country that it can be done in. And I think I told you this in the back. my view of diversity is so interesting because right now, I think diversity in America is a little bit under fire. People are always talking about anti-diversity, and that I grew up with so many different cultures. When you mentioned the World Liberty Conference, that was my entire class, from all the different places in the world that people came from. And we got together and we talked about our differences and we talked about our similarities, but most of all, we were Canadian and we just were there living together. And I remember coming to the United States at the time, and it was very different. It was sort of like you had to belong to a certain cohort. So I think what you're doing.
I remember when I was applying to college.
Yeah.
And, how do you identify yourself? And,
Yeah.
I got different boxes. I asked my father, so what is this? I'm brown, right?
Yeah.
So there was no brown box.
There
was no brown box.
I'm still.
And it's like, are you Hispanic? No, well,
Yeah.
I'm not
from Venezuela.
Hispanic. I'm Venezuelan.
Yeah.
I'm a brown Venezuelan. so my first shock coming here was that
Yeah.
self description of the box.
The idea that you got to put yourself in some box that somebody else has created for you, when we're all so dynamic, even in our heritages and our ethnicities, our cultures. So I want to thank you for coming today, but there's one more question I have for you. And you sort of outlined it for me in your work in the World Liberty Congress, but what would you say that, I know you're never finished. Clearly you're never finished. But if there's one thing where we look back and say, man, this is the effect that Leopoldo had on the world, what would that be? What would that one thing be?
Well, I hope that we can reverse that trend of autocracy becoming more prevalent at a global level. I would like to see cases of success. I would love that first case to be my own country, Venezuela, and that we can start to shift the tide and become more and more democratic, to have a fourth wave of democratization. And if I can have an impact on that, and if I can have an impact on the fact that a new type of global leadership that is committed, truly committed, not to the pragmatist positioning of supporting freedom and democracy and human rights, but really, really, really committing to the idea that everybody's created equal, that everybody has the same rights, that everybody should be given the same opportunities. That's what I will dedicate the rest of my life to. And I feel blessed that I have a purpose. It's taking me to tough places. And as I told you, I've been on top, I've been on the bottom, but I've always been focused in the purpose. So for me, it's been a blessing to live life with a purpose, waking up every day knowing that, well, they took me away from my country. I can now not be in my country, but I figure out a way to channel my energy with the same purpose in a different landscape.
Right.
And now, for me, freedom in Venezuela or freedom in Uganda or freedom in Iran is as important and it's as meaningful. And I believe that this is something that we can contribute in a great deal to bring people together, and with the attitude of overcoming the hardships of an autocrat, not with the attitude of being a victim. Because in the space of human rights, there are many conferences about human rights, and there are some that are very, very good, but they usually focus on the story of a victim in order to get the pity of the people. I don't want the tears. I don't want the pity of the people. I want the support of the people for our cause. That's what I want. I want people to engage in the cause. I want people to think of themselves as agents of change. I don't want the tears and the pity of something that happened in the past, because if you live as a victim, you neutralize yourself. You're always giving power to the oppressor. If you stand up, and just say how much hardship you went through, you're also telling the story of how strong the dictatorship is.
Right.
That's the underlying story. But if you tell the story in a different way, saying this is what we went through, but this is what we are continuing to do in order to overcome the dictatorship, that puts you in a different position.
So would you consider yourself a disruptor?
Oh, absolutely. At core. There was actually, when you were mentioning the disruptor type of leadership, in 2015, Foreign Policy Magazine, they did this world leadership thing, and they had categories, and I was heading the disruptor category.
You were?
Yeah.
Okay, that means...
I was in prison at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a troublemaker. That's what
I think that's a better word.
That's a better word. So we'll change disruptor.
So let me tell you about my first movement. I know we're at the end, but I was in college at the time, and this is when Desert Storm was happening.
Yeah.
Going through the frat thing, and there was the pledging. And after a week of pledging, I was like, I'm not going to do this, man. I'm not going to go through this. Hey, I'm nothing against it, but it was just not for me.
For you,
not for me. So I decided to create our own thing. So we created this movement called ASHES, Active Students Helping the Earth Survive, and this is in the early '90s. Not now when climate change is completely mainstream. And I decided to organize a movement under the aura of Greenpeace. So Desert Storm comes in. This is January of 1991, I believe.
Yeah.
And we were against the war and all of this.
Yeah.
And we decided to protest. So what we did is exactly a month after the dropping of the first bombs, we decided to pull the alarms at the exact same time 1 month after that. So 25 of us in our bicycles. There were no iPhones at the time.
Just
we synchronized our watches with our black hoodies. With our black hoodies.
All right, I'll put mine out.
With the black hoodies, we go in and we pulled, all of the alarms of the college.
Wow.
And the next day we had, our manifesto. Things were going very well, but a friend of mine who was in charge of copying the manifesto had gone to Kinko's, and it was very easy for the head of security of the university to go say, "Did anybody come here to copy this manifesto?" "Oh yeah." "Did they leave the student ID?" "Oh yeah, here's the student ID." So they caught Pete. Pete comes to me and he says, "We were caught. I was caught. They're gonna kick me out." I said, "No, my friend. We're gonna do this.
We got this."
So the 25 of us, we showed up to the dean's office. And we were suspended, and but not kicked out of college.
Yeah.
And I was going out with a woman at the time whose uncle was the head of the Teamsters in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So we for 3 weeks I was a volunteer.
Yeah.
Teamsters doing the full thing. So years after that, they gave me a PhD. An honoris causa PhD.
Oh, wow.
And I told this story. And basically, I told the students, I said, you need to be a disruptor.
You need to be a disruptor.
And there might be consequences. Maybe it was not a good idea to pull the alarms, and I know that's not a good thing. But we certainly put the conversation front and center, and we certainly started to change things. So, I've always thought of myself as just disrupting and taking risks. I'm for sure a risk taker, and feeling always that you're in the path of doing the things that are meaningful.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming. So I've never been across the pond, never been to Europe ever, although I fly way too much. And so you coming across the pond to come see me means that I owe you a visit to come see you.
You have to come.
Even though I've never been across.
I don't need a reason. I don't need an excuse.
You don't need an excuse, but
I love Spain.
But
Spain is a great country.
But honestly, I really appreciate you coming, spending the time telling the story. I think you all out there definitely will, check out Leopoldo on his website. Check out the World Liberty Conference. Check out him on social media. I think you bring, I think there's lessons. Obviously, you want to change the world from the perspective of the autocratic regimes, which I think is a a magnificent goal, but I actually really think that your goal, as you saw that it was broader than Venezuela, my interpretation of what you could do for the world is much, much, much broader. You have a way to look at things that, from a leadership perspective, you have changed me in this podcast today. You've changed my, and I've already known you and I've already heard the stories, but just looking into your eyes and feeling what you felt and the way you are phrasing things and what you understand, you're a brilliant leader. And so you're definitely a less than 1% leader, or maybe for you, we'll call it you're the 2%.
I mean, the 2%.
But I really appreciate you. And, again, thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you, Mu. Thank you. And congratulations on this initiative for the podcast. And you're also a great leader and with a great story and with a great company. I didn't know, this part of engaging in a democratic way with the partners and being accountable to the people you work with.
Yep.
I think that's very important. And I think that, in whatever industry people are, just find what is really meaningful.
Yes.
And wake up and do it. And know that there's going to be bad days.
Yeah.
And try to make the best of that desert and learn from the desert.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to meeting more of your peers.
Yeah.
And I'm always here.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. All right. Appreciate it.